Hi, all. It is Dispeller, and we are back with the very last part of dealing with people you can't stand. I know you all will be happy to hear that, those of you that are bored of the book. But I wanted to finish it. I like to finish what I start. I'm not always good at that, so I'm trying to retrain my brain to do that. I'm going live now because I can. And last time people said to go live at 1, they never showed up. So I'm just going to go live now and do it, and we can have a discussion during, before, after, whatever. I don't care. Let's just talk if you want to talk. If you don't, then I'll just read and finish this book up and be done with it. I've already started on the Boundaries book. If you haven't been with us for that, I'll post it somewhere in one of the corners of the screen so you can be looking for that. So this is called Communication in a Digital Age. We reveal the limitations and pitfalls of phone communication and email and show you how to turn the limitations into advantages with a pound of prevention. Most of us these days have a computer, have a phone, we use email, we use texting. This is going to kind of help you, I think, communicate a little clearer in those forms of messaging. Who can't use that, right? I think I can. So we're learning together. I've never read this part of this book. I haven't really read most of this book on my own at all, which is why I read it with you, so that I also could be benefiting from the reading of it, because I knew I wouldn't do it on my own. So having you there for kind of, I don't know if you want to say an audience, but people to go along with me just made it feel a little bit easier to read it. So then I can get rid of this book once I read it. It's one less book. I can minimize my book supply. Okay, so communication and the challenge of technology. Face to face communication has always been challenging enough. Now, thanks to the convenience of modern technology, it's possible for even good relationships to turn sour and for your problems with people to go from bad to worse with unprecedented speed. In chapters 4 through 6, we discussed the importance of looking and sounding like you're on common ground with someone under the basic assumption that people don't cooperate with other people who seem to be against them. Face to face communication offers numerous ways to send and receive signals that indicate this common ground. However, phone and email communications block some of these signals, and they emphasize others, offering some important advantages and disadvantages. In this part of the book, we will reveal the nature of the problem and offer strategies to reduce conflict and improve communication by phone and email. The numbers of meaning. Back in 1967, year after I was born, Dr. Albert Mehrabian, a professor at UCLA, conducted a study on the relative importance of verbal and nonverbal messages when people communicate their feelings and attitudes. Thank you for the thumbs up. He observed that most people send mixed messages much of the time, and he wanted to gain understanding into how it is possible to make sense out of the messages. Mehrabian devised a study that involved filming people who were communicating about their feelings. He then produced 3 different versions of the same interaction in that film and presented these versions to the group of people. They viewed a copy of the film with no soundtrack. Then they listened to a soundtrack that had been run through a synthesizer that made the words incomprehensible but left the tone, volume, and speed intact. Then they read a written transcript containing the actual words spoken by the people in the film. He found that most of the people in the study group thought they were experiencing 3 different interactions: a business meeting, people angry with each other, and friends talking. They were quite surprised to discover that all 3 versions were from the same interaction. Based on their responses, he reached the following conclusions. 55% of the meaning people make in any communication about feelings and attitudes is based on what they see. 38% of the meaning is based on how it sounds, the tone, the volume, and the speed. 7% of the meaning is based on the actual words that are spoken. Remember that when you have a conversation with someone and it's pretty intense and emotional, that only 7% of what people are understanding you say are based on what the actual words are that you're speaking. The rest of it is in your body language and the tone that they're interpreting. This is what we affectionately refer to as the 55, 38, and the 7, or if you prefer, the numbers of meaning. We believe these numbers of meaning are important for understanding communication in general. Now, in many ways, these percentages should come as no surprise. After all, common axioms such as seeing is believing and actions speak louder than words point to the stronger influence of the 55%, the visual component of communication. Television directors seem to be aware of this too. Perhaps you've seen episodes of the original Candid Camera television series. Host Alan Funt created amusing scenarios of mixed messages, and then he filmed the unsuspecting people dealing with them. In one show, he filled a doctor's waiting room with actors and actresses reading magazines waiting for the doctor, but they were dressed only in their underwear. Waiting, real patients walked in the room, had a moment of shock, and then got undressed and picked up magazines to read while waiting for the doctor. This just goes to show, pun intended, that the visual element of our interactions with others is profoundly compelling, which is why some parents must resort to the futile admonition, do what I say, not what I do. In other words, people pay more attention to what you do than what you say because they're not really interpreting what you're saying in the correct way, which is why there's so many misunderstandings online, I believe, and in emails and in text messages, all that stuff. I know that when I'm talking to Matthew in text, I sometimes have to say things 3 different ways before he realizes the meaning of it. Sometimes with him too, I have to ask for clarification because it's not coming across the way he means it at all. And we've learned to very rarely assume what each other means. We usually ask lots of questions. It's important. The way people sound when they talk to you, 38% of the communication usually reflects their emotional state and sends an ego message. It's a personal message about you, and it plays a significant role in how you make sense of mixed messages. As mentioned in Chapter 7, people take your tone of voice personally. The tech support person on the phone may be giving you excellent advice, but his voice seems to say, you moron. You may be giving a friend reasonable directions to your party, but your rushed tone makes it sound like you're saying, could you at least try to catch up? I've got more important people to talk to and things to do than talking with you. And while the actual words we use may constitute only 7% of the meaning of a particular communication, we all know that just one small word can serve as a trigger or buzzword that sets an entire chain of reaction in motion. We once had a patient who told us about the neighborhood kid who tormented her when she was a little girl. They gave her the nickname Moose, and they were relentless in repeating it. 30 years later, she was at a cocktail party with fellow professionals. The word moose came up during a casual conversation, and her whole experience of the party changed in the blink of an eye. Her feelings about the person who used the word became negative, and all she could think of was getting away. While this reaction made no sense to her consciously, unconsciously it had brought up a whole realm of insecure feelings. For this reason, many adults are reluctant to share their childhood nicknames with others. You know, on here, for instance, on YouTube, some of us don't like being called certain things, so we've changed our names on purpose. Like, I don't like being called delusional. I hate that because I'm not delusional. I'm very aware of my surroundings and what's going on. I'm not stupid. And when you call me delusional, it makes me feel like you're saying I'm stupid or unaware or ignorant or something like that. There's other people on here that hate being called nicknames. You might want to think of that when you call somebody something. I'm not saying everybody knows as soon as you change your name to call you that, because not everybody does. Not everyone is in the same live stream that you announce that you're changing your name. But once they tell you it's not this, it's that, like I'll often say it's not DelusionDispeller anymore, it's just Dispeller, because that delusion part kept getting called delusional and it kept ticking me off and making it really hard to want to be on here. So it's Dispeller. I dispel things. I dispel myths. I dispel ignorance. I dispel sticking your head in the sand when you should take action. I'm a dispeller. I'm not delusional. So I don't like it when people call me that, and it just makes me not want to be here. So I get what this person was feeling with that nickname Moose. Maybe you understand it too if people are calling you things you don't want to be called. Okay. And if you do that, if somebody tells you, look, it's this or it's not that, like if I say it's not delusional, it's just Dispeller, and you keep calling me delusional, you're just mean. You're just cruel. That's all I can say about that. Okay, the greatest value of knowing about the 55, 38, and 7 is in helping you remember the order of priority by which people make sense of each other and how it is possible that mixed messages produce misunderstanding. Anytime there's a difference between what you see, what you hear, and what is actually said, there's a potential for people problems. Even in face to face communication, a common mixed message occurs when there's a difference between what is said and how it sounds. If, in an argument, a husband declares his love for his wife by screaming, "I love you, don't you get that?" she probably won't. Yet, if we examine the words by themselves, "I love you, don't you get that?" they seem all right. Add an angry tone and loud volume, however, and the behavior just doesn't match. And when there's a mismatch, people tend to respond to the higher number. Tone of voice tends to reveal a person's emotional state, even when the person's trying to keep it hidden. Suppose you're having an intense emotional response to something you're seeing or hearing. You may want the interaction to be a positive one, and your good intentions may attempt to keep your feelings pushed down, shoved aside, and out of the way. The problem is, while your conscious mind is busy selecting the words you'll use to express yourself, the 7%, your suppressed emotions tend to leak out through the tone of your voice. Unfortunately for you, the receiver of your communication may ignore your carefully chosen words and respond only to your voice tone. Why? Because whenever there's a mixed message, people tend to respond to the higher number in the 55, 38, and 7. So remember that when you're trying to put across a message, your voice tone has a lot to do with how people receive you and understand what you're saying. Not so much your words, but the way you say the words. Something lost, something gained. When you're talking on the phone or communicating in writing, you lose access to the subtle visual cues that would help you to account for what you're hearing. You can't see how the other person looks, and she can't see you. Some people know they're being listened to when you look them in the eyes and nod your head while they're talking, but those signals don't transmit over the phone line or over avatars, y'all. As a result, you could be nodding your head, and for all the other person knows, you've gone for a cup of coffee. In written communications, you lose 55% and 38%, and only the words remain. It is quite natural to hallucinate freely how the other person sounds, and even to react to that hallucination as fact. In communication, just as in life, when something is lost, something may be gained. In this case, phone and written communications have some profound advantages that outweigh the seeming disadvantages. If you're unaware of, or if you are aware of and utilize those advantages, you can expand your communication success. Okay, well, that only took 13 minutes. That wasn't too bad, I guess. Like I said, I'm finishing up today with this book. We're almost done. There's just like this much left. I'll tell you exactly how many pages you have to sit through if you decide to be with me today. 4, 5, maybe 15, 20 pages, I think. Something like that. Right now, we're just learning about random communication. We just talked about how the technology versus actually in-person, face-to-face communication works, and how things can get lost. Meanings can get lost when you don't have that eye contact. You don't have the oh yeah, I prefer to show my face on camera. I wish other people would show their face. I wish it was mandatory that people show their face if they're going to be on camera. I mean, back in the day when we used to watch like TV shows on TV, we didn't sit and watch avatars. We sat and watched people acting or talking. So why should that even be a thing where people can become cartoon characters and not be real? I don't like it personally. Okay, not saying I never do it. There are times I do because I look a wreck or whatever. I try not to do it. I try to show you my real self and my real face because I'm a person. I'm not a cartoon. Okay, the 8 ounces of prevention in phone communication. Now we're talking about being on the phone, cell phone. Here's your little picture. When you talk on the phone, you're cut off from the visual cues, the 55%, that would help you make sense of what you're hearing. On the phone, communication comes across in how a person sounds, the 38%, and what they say, the 7%. What happens to the 55%? When the visual elements of face to face interaction are removed, people often make up their own mental images. Let's say you're on the phone with someone you've never met. The voice you hear may remind you of someone else or some other time in your personal history. Or you may associate the tone, speed, and volume with a certain kind of person, based, of course, on your own experience. So you create an image in your mind's eye that makes sense out of what you're hearing. And then you respond to what you see in that mental image. Have you ever had the experience of meeting someone face to face that you'd previously talked to only on the phone, and the person looked completely different from what you expected? Yep, Becky. That's because you believed the image in your mind to be real until you were faced with reality. Now, suppose that you had negative feelings associated with the image you made up in the privacy of your own mind. Do you suppose this could influence the way you make sense of the words you hear? Do you suppose that the way you hear the words might influence your reactions? Of course, and quite often that's exactly what happens. Here are 8 ounces of prevention that can turn the phone to your advantage. Number 1, shape perceptions. A phone conversation comes down to small moments in time that shape perception. All phone conversations are a string of such moments, from how you greet people when you or they answer the phone, how you respond when they tell you something, their response to your response, what you say, and how you sound when you put them on hold, and vice versa. And in those moments, either you're adding to or subtracting from the ease of the relationship, simplifying the next moment, or growing the complexity of what's required of you. And the funny thing is, these moments have little to do with truth and everything to do with perception. You can think you're doing everything right while everything is going wrong, because there's no visual feedback in a phone conversation. You can believe you're saying and doing all the wrong things, only to find that the person you're talking to is grateful for your time. For this reason, it's important for you to assume that you do not know how you're going to be perceived. Then do everything you can to actively shape the perception of the person on the other end of the line. For example, taking notes while listening to what someone is saying to you over the phone is a great way of keeping track of what you're hearing. I need to start doing that. But since that person can't see that you're writing, he or she may become concerned at the sounds of silence on your end of the line, unless you mention that you're going to take some notes. You could be smiling at something the other person is saying, but unless you verbalize that fact, the person may never know. You could be concerned about the problem being described to you, but unless you mention your concern, the other person is free to assume you don't care. So, for instance, I went and visited somebody a while back, a long time ago. They were somebody I chatted with online, like on a regular basis. And they would type into chat tears, like they were crying, or LOL, like they were laughing. Now, when I actually spent time with that person and watched them in front of the computer doing this with other people, typing in tears or LOL or ROFL, whatever, I'm sitting there watching them type tears. I'm like, there's not a tear in your eye. Or LOL, you're not laughing. Why are you saying you're laughing at this person? Or you find that funny? You have a stern face. You're not laughing. It's weird. It seemed very weird to me. We don't think about that stuff when we're actually chatting online. We type in LOL like we're laughing hysterically over here, and we're just sitting there. Oh, that's funny. you know, it's almost like a self deception type of thing, I think. Um, I catch myself sometimes doing that. So now I'm very careful. If I say LOL, I'm pretty much over here laughing at you and enjoying what you're saying. If I say tears, I'm upset. I'm tearing up. Even if it's just inside, my emotions are matching what I'm typing. It's ironic how little it takes to have successful phone interactions, even with people behaving badly, considering how big a problem can become if you fail to do those little things that make the big difference. The heart and soul of all human relationship comes down to the simple fact that little counts big, and little things add up, both the good and the bad. For example, people only need 2 or 3 examples of something to form a generalization. And once people form such generalizations, they'll automatically and unconsciously seek aspects of their experience that fulfill those generalizations. Have you ever told someone on the phone your name, and then a little later the person asked for your name? Have you ever given someone your phone number over the phone and a short while later the person asks for your phone number? What generalization did you make about that person's listening skills? Once a negative opinion is formed, anything can be judged as a negative and will be judged as a negative in the light of that opinion. Generalizations can work for or against you, and often it boils down to these little moments that shape perceptions, moments where the little things count big. Yeah, I've had situations where I was talking to somebody and I would tell them something and they would ask me whatever and they'd be like, I would be like, I just told you that. It happens with my daughter all the time. She'll tell me stuff and I won't quite hear her and I'll be like, oh yeah, uh-huh, because I'll be busy doing other things. And she'll say, Mom, are you listening? Yeah, I'm listening. And then 5 minutes later, I'll say, well, who are we talking about again? And what happened? She's like, Mom, you're not listening. You were not listening at all. I just told you that. Yes, that's true. I am guilty as charged of that for sure. Because Amber can go on and on about stuff and I lose track and I lose focus. I am drinking my morning smoothie, by the way. It has banana, mango, almond milk, a little bit of peanut butter, some vanilla. Or did I put the vanilla in? I don't know. It's got stevia in it. And I mixed it with some hibiscus tea. Very good. I think it's raspberry hibiscus or something. Okay, so use your body control. By the way, before I continue, if you're new here and you like this format, or maybe you like my other videos or just my channel, hit the subscribe button. Feel free to join our Dispeller family and we can go along together. You can make suggestions of things you want to see here, what interests you, etc. I'll take it all into consideration. Hit a like if you like the video. A thumb up would be a like. Subscribe, like, share, and hit the bell. That means you won't miss any future videos. Okay, number 2, use your body for tone control. Your ability to control your emotional reactions and the sound of your voice is one of the biggest advantages of talking on the phone. Your tone of voice is wired to your body, and what you do with your body has an effect on your tone. This is probably why some of the most successful telemarketing people keep mirrors on their desks, along with signs reminding them to smile. I don't think we ever had a mirror, maybe, but I definitely had signs saying smile, because I had to smile when I was talking to people on the phone, so I sounded so interested in helping them. Even if they were driving me crazy, I would have to keep an even tone and act like I liked them. So I miss telemarketing sometimes. I was a telemarketer for over 20 years. I sold everything from pizzas to health products to Avon. I made appointments for siding and windows. I made an appointment. I was a personal assistant to an insurance agent. I used to take his calls and set up appointments for him to go meet with his clients, do his debits, and then he would actually call me on the phone and tell me exactly where he was and map, like, I'm here and this is where I'm going. Can you look it up on the map and let me know how much farther I have to go? Do you know what place I'm going to? And I was his personal assistant. That was for National Association for the Self-Employed Insurance Company. And yeah, I made good money doing that too. It was like $17 an hour. And I think it was almost $20 an hour before I stopped. But that was back in the day, and then I ended up opening up the restaurant with my ex-husband and had no time to do any of the telemarketing anymore. I think that may have been, no, that wasn't my last job. I think working for the Acre company, siding and windows, was my last telemarketing job, maybe. All right. You can use this to your advantage. When you find yourself getting a little too intense in a phone conversation, lean back, put your feet up, and get in a relaxed posture. That relaxation is likely to have a noticeable effect on your tone of voice. When you need to sound more assertive or commanding, you can get up, take a position of stability and strength by spreading your legs a shoulder length apart, and then add some flexibility by bending slightly at the knee. When you want to sound casual, you can lean against your desk. The phone actually allows you to have more mastery over your emotional reactions than you might have in face-to-face communication. Hank, a tech support rep for a high-tech company, told us how he deals with upset customers if he finds himself starting to take their verbal abuse personally. Thanks to the headset he wears, he's able to get up out of his chair and move around. So he does yoga stretches while working with aggressive clients. This helps him to relax because he can't just take things personally when he's in a yoga posture. Admittedly, if you were face to face with difficult people and you started doing yoga, you probably would confuse the heck out of them. Such behavior might seem insane at worst and inappropriate at best in most circumstances. The phone thankfully creates a shield of privacy that allows for offbeat and highly effective behavioral strategies that can change your emotional state to something more productive. So, has anybody ever done that? If you're on the phone with somebody that's annoying you, irritating you, making you angry, have you ever gone into some kind of a yoga posture or done something, weird to try to make it sound like you're engaged and not upset? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Marcy, who works for a government agency, was required to do a radio interview over the phone. She was nervous about being on the radio to begin with, since she'd never done a radio interview before. Making matters worse, the person who would be conducting the interview was known to be hostile to this particular governmental agency. Marcy had heard about a speaking technique that professional presenters sometimes use to combat nervousness. You guys have heard of this one, I'm sure. They visualize the audience dressed only in their underwear. She decided to apply it in reverse. She did the interview from her home, completely naked. And no matter how hard the interviewer tried to provoke her, she wouldn't take the bait, because all the while she was smiling over this very private joke. And that came through her tone. Unfortunately for Marcy, everyone at the office was so impressed with her performance that they voted to have her do all future interviews. And she couldn't do them that way, I guess. Breathe for your life. Breathing intentionally is a great way to control your emotional reactions without having to suppress them into a grievance that might surface and sabotage your efforts at a later moment. As you pay attention to your breathing, inspiring yourself when you inhale and releasing tension as you exhale. Good morning, Jeff. The person on the other end will hear only your occasional backtracking and clarifying. You can breathe much more deeply when on the phone than you might be comfortable with in person, since such behavior in person might draw attention and elicit a negative reaction. You may want to hit the mute button to take a few breaths. If you don't have a mute button, move the receiver away from your mouth and take some nice deep breaths while the other person is talking. Breathing advantage to the phone. Yeah, that's true. You can also do other things when you put them on mute. Some things that are not so nice that in the past, the very distant past, I used to do. Grumble, in no uncertain terms. And sometimes I would pray or just mute the phone and go, just depends who you're talking to and if your mute button is working. There were times I thought I had somebody on mute and screamed or said something that I later regretted too. So be careful with that one. Chart a course. It's also easier to take notes while talking on the phone than it is while dealing face to face with an aggressive person. If you're being targeted with an angry diatribe, you can write down keywords or phrases that the person says and use those phrases to backtrack effectively. You can even write down keywords to remind you of what you want to say in response when it's your turn to talk. Such notes become a helpful map that you can use to implement the behavioral strategies we provided in part 3 of this book, or you can just use them to return some semblance of rationality to the interaction. You can also use note-taking as a way of venting your emotional response to someone behaving badly on the other end of the line. Draw a silly picture of how you think the person looks. Put horns on the face, add a mustache, scribble all over the picture, and then X the face out entirely. When it comes to handling your feelings with people out of control, maybe you did learn everything you needed to know in kindergarten. Yeah. Number 5, know when to hold them and when to fold them. While the hold button can be your ally, it also poses the danger of making things worse. That's because wait is on the other side of hold. Most people have a whole life going on outside of their relationship with you, and every moment spent on hold is a moment stolen from some potentially more productive activity. And what makes the wait unbearable? Not knowing when it's going to end. 2 minutes can seem like an hour to people who have pressing agendas and don't know when you'll be back. In general, before putting people on hold, ask their permission and tell them how long they'll likely have to wait. If they don't like the choice, give them options. Also, another thing that I absolutely despise is when people say 1 second, please, and the 1 second turns into like 10 minutes, a half an hour. Don't tell me 1 second if it's going to be half an hour. Just say this might take a while. Like, and I'll say, how long of a while? Oh, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. I'll say, okay, that's fine. Or I'll say, well, I'll call you back. Give people the option. They don't want to sit on hold forever. I hate hold. Anyway, if someone is behaving like a tank, then putting that person on hold will likely escalate the problem. Remember, the tank is moving forward fast, and anything that takes time or seems irrelevant may be deemed a provocation. If you're going to put a tank on hold, first state the purpose of doing so and how it serves the interests of the tank. This is what we call in Chapter 8, Get What You Project and Expect. A statement of intent. In order to solve your problem fast, I need to talk to someone else. It'll only take a minute or 2 minutes at most. May I put you on hold, or would you prefer that I call you back? That seems more reasonable to me, actually. The statement of intent is this. In order to solve your problem fast, this blends with the tank's desire for action. By providing a time frame that is, it will only take a minute, 2 minutes at most. You give the tank some sense of control over the wait. After all, you can be certain that the tank doesn't have all day, but make sure the time frame you give is realistic. Do not tell the tank this will only take a minute and then take 4 minutes. Exactly like I just said. Because by the time you get back, your tank will be ready to launch a full-scale assault. Asking for permission and waiting for an answer also blends with the tank's desire for control, as does offering the option to call him or her back. It's a safe assumption that the tank has places to go, things to do, and people to see. With a grenade, on the other hand, hold gives you a tremendous advantage. The fourth step in the grenade strategy is take a break, because grenades do not like losing it. Your use of the hold button gives them some private time to compose. If you've ever had to deal with a grenade on the phone and you passed the call along to someone else, it's likely that the next person found a more normal person on the other end of the line. Or you can always make up an excuse for ending the call and let the grenade know you'll call back in a few minutes. When you call back, you'll find yourself dealing with a somewhat calmer, more rational person. If you ever find yourself in a situation of taking the call of a person who's been left on hold for a long time, prepare to blend by acknowledging the long wait and by apologizing for the inconvenience. I know you were holding a long time. I really apologize for the inconvenience. What did you want to talk about? By quickly blending and then focusing forward, it's highly likely that the person will stop brooding and brewing about what has passed and focus instead on the reason for the call. Good morning, Marley. 6. Sending listening signals. Many of the signals that people recognize as listening behaviors, eye contact, head nodding, note taking, and meaningful looks, are seen more than heard. Since you can't send those signals over the phone, you must be certain to give verbal signals of listening instead. Instead of meaningful looks, I'm happy you caught it too. Do more meaningful grunting. Ugh. Oh no. Wow. You're kidding. Then what happened? You say parts of words and phrases because you want people to know you're right there with them, but you also want to stay out of their way. Backtracking, as we listened in Chapter 5, or discussed in Chapter 5, is always important, but the power of backtracking is multiplied when on the phone. Remember that when you backtrack, you not only let people know that you have listened to them, but you also buy some time to think about what you want to ask or say next and how you want to steer the conversation. When you take notes and backtrack, you let the people you're talking to on the phone, know that you're still on the line. That's better than the sound of silence, which might mistakenly give the impression that you're not listening. Speaking of silence, have you noticed lately certain companies you call and they don't even have music? They just have nothing, just nothing. So you have no idea if you're even still connected to them. That's annoying. But then again, there's annoying music as well that drives me crazy. So you can't win with me. I'm picky when it comes to phone interactions, probably because I was a telemarketer for 20 years. So I feel like I know how it should go. Sound prepared even when you're not. It sometimes happens that people provide you with personal information in a phone conversation. When they do, make note of it for future reference, since these personal details allow you to build a relationship. Then, before making a call or while taking a call, you can look up the details and use them as points of reference that tell the callers you value talking to them. Note, beware of multitasking. Don't go off and surf the net or play a game while talking to people, unless you want to give them the distinct impression that you're not listening. Yeah, my daughter and I do that to each other all the time. It is very good information. I think it is anyway. Number 8, you can close your eyes. The 8th advantage of talking on the phone, you can close your eyes to concentrate, not to catch up on sleep, unless you have a tape recording of you grunting occasionally. When you close your eyes, you remove visual distractions, and this may actually help you focus on what you're hearing. This might be useful to you when the precision of your communication is important, or when difficult details are being discussed, or when past experience tells you that you're going to be tested on what you've heard. There's a method to making the most out of your listening with your eyes closed. First, begin with the assumption that you know nothing. Picture a blank slate in your mind's eye. Then allow the person's words to provide the details in your thinking. If something is missing, you can always backtrack and ask a clarification question to fill in the blanks. While you can't do this for long periods in face-to-face communication, closing your eyes while you listen is a naturally good choice over the phone. When it comes to ounces of prevention, the phone is an advantage waiting to be taken for implementing the strategies given in part 3. Using these ounces of prevention, you may be able to avoid the pounds of cure for dealing with the 10 plus 3 most unwanted. Oh, I know. I have ADD also and have the same problem, Marley. Quick summary. When you are communicating on the phone, the 8 ounces of phone prevention are this. 1, shape perceptions. 2, use your body for tone control. 3, breathe for your life. 4, chart a course. 5, know when to hold them and when to fold them. 6, send listening signals. 7, sound prepared even when you're not. And 8, you can close your eyes. I'm going to talk about email next. And then I believe that is it. That's the last chapter in the book, and we are done. So you came for the last chapter. Yay. And then we're finished with this book. Okay. Banana does not slurp very well through a straw, I've noticed. Oh, well. Oh, thank you. Catching my uploads. Cool. Good deal. I appreciate that. Okay, the 8 ounces of prevention in email communication. We'll say it again. In interpersonal communication, when something is lost, something is gained. In the case of email, you lose the nonverbal and auditory set of signals that add color, depth, and dimension to the words that are communicated. That's a lot to lose. Without the 55% and the 38%, the remaining 7% becomes 100% of the interaction. Adding to the loss is an artificial gain of 38% hallucinations based on how you think the other person sounds. My toe's better, but it's very bruised. I'll show it to you in just a little while. But here's what you gain from using electronic communication tools, including email, texts, and social media, the element of time. Written communication, no matter how urgent, generally does not demand the same kind of immediate interactive response that face-to-face or phone-to-phone communication requires. Even if you only take a few minutes before hitting reply, you gain at least that much time to relax, to clarify, and then to transmit a reasonable and well-thought-out message. In the old days, depending on how far back you go, writing to another person meant sitting down with paper and quill, then paper and pen, then paper and typewriter, then paper, printer, and computer. After composing your letter, you might reread it, correct it, and then rewrite it again, knowing that once it was gone, it would be gone. If you were satisfied with what you'd written, you put it in an envelope, dropped it into a mailbox, and waited for it to be picked up and delivered. Don't forget the stamp, too. You do that, too. And having taken all that time, you still might have to run to the mailbox to pull it out before the postal carrier arrived. I've had that happen. The lengthy process of producing a written document gave people the advantage of plenty of time to think things through. So much time accrued to correspondence that Sometimes along the way, they might decide there was no point in sending a reply. The information age changed all that. Where written correspondence by its nature was thoughtful and time-consuming process, you can now copy, paste, quote, respond, and skip printing and go straight to send in mere minutes. Where once your message might not be delivered and read for days, weeks, or months, the acceleration of communication in the information age first changed that to days and then a day, overnight delivery. And now in no time at all, as email is delivered almost instantly. As the amount of electronic communication has mushroomed, the amount of misunderstanding has exploded right along with it. Time is only on your side if you intentionally make the choice to take advantage of it. The problems caused by the speed of electronic communications are compounded daily by the sheer quantity of it. The astonishing volume of email messages pouring into people's inboxes has many people feeling overwhelmed, and it's likely that the more email you receive, the less time you're apt to take for a thoughtful reading and reply to a particular message. If you respond to 50 to 80 messages a day, you're far more likely to cut to the chase and leave out the social pleasantries of non-electronic interaction from a less frenzied time. Instead of beginning a conversation with, "Hi, how are you doing? What's new? Blah, blah, blah." Now it's your message, do this, do that, and here's where to go. The friendly or frustrated nuances of voice and facial expression are gone, so the readers of email don't see the writer's emotions. Nevertheless, it is common for someone reading a message to hallucinate freely about the writer's emotions, and this is influenced in turn by the reader's hormonal and blood sugar levels at the time of reading. Often, any reference to a previous message is missing. As a result, hastily written words make the wrong point. Well-intended humor written with a gleam in the eye is misunderstood as a snipe or a smirk. A casual reference with multiple meanings is taken the wrong way. All too often, the lack of context and cues becomes the focal point for conflict. Sentences lacking perspective produce a tunnel vision reaction that rolls through time. You're told to go places a lot. Yet another contributing factor to electronic messaging conflict. People compose their messages in front of a computer screen where their thoughts become words in isolation. Without the ameliorating influence of immediate feedback from others, the distance between correspondence can remove the social inhibition that might otherwise cause a person to think twice before speaking. Perhaps you recall Mark Twain's caution, better to say nothing and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and prove it beyond a doubt. Sadly, the words composed in isolation get sent when they should have remained the private thoughts of the sender. Email allows for more blatant and raw expressions of one's actual thoughts. So between the lack of visual and auditory cues, the pressing volume of messages, the missing niceties of polite society, the lack of humanity in staring at a screen, and the acting on impulse instead of taking the time for a considered response, these electronic misunderstandings have become a miscommunication epidemic. Use the advantage of time. While it's true that email comes in on someone else's timetable, it's up to you when to read and respond to it. We've heard so many stories of email replies sent in haste that produce nasty side effects and awful results, like firing a shot that launches 1,000 ships. When you push the send button, the damage has already been done. So our first piece of advice is simple. Never reply quickly or impulsively to any email that even seems to have the emotional content, and never initiate an email interaction with messages containing strong emotional content. An emotional email deserves the advantage of time. Oh, I know, Marley, me too. And you must take that advantage. After all, the emotion you perceive may be your own. Your state of mind or feelings about the topic could cause you to misunderstand the intensity or meaning of what you've read. It takes less time to write a reasoned reply than it does to deal with the consequences of a message that is sent hastily. When you take back the advantage of time, you can use it to deal with your emotional response to what you're reading. Time lets you safely vent your reaction with a spouse. If home is where you go when you're tired of being nice to people, or a friend who has the emotional stamina to tolerate your rant. Meanwhile, you can consider and reconsider what you ultimately want from the interaction. Time lets you compose a first draft and get back to it in light of the next day to take it the next step. Time lets you open up this book to the appropriate chapter, find the best strategy, and then craft your reply so to utilize it. Better still, by taking time, you give the difficult people some time too. Yesterday, those people may have acted like tanks trying to blast you out of the way. By waiting to reply, you've given them a day to move out of the danger zone, to shift their blood sugar, and to attend to other things that were eating at them and fueling their attack. By taking some time to reply, you're more likely to communicate effectively, and the people to whom you send your messages are more likely to be able to hear them as you intend them. Advantage yours. There are going to be times when the strategies offered earlier in this book for dealing with difficult behavior in person will apply to your written communications as well. Perhaps you've had that unsettling experience after a face to face interaction of realizing the perfect thing that you wish you had said. Unfortunately for you, it was too little too late. Person to person, it's easy to feel like you're under the gun, with a tank at a loss for words, with a sniper feeling foolish, with a know it all and furious at a maybe person. But in electronic correspondence, you gain the advantages of clarity and self control when you take back the advantage of time. Perhaps more important, when using email, if you want to avoid the misunderstandings that bring out the worst in yourself and others in the first place, get time back on your side and make clarity your highest priority. The 8 ounces of prevention. Here's how you prevent misunderstandings in email. As always, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of reaction. So take the time to apply these ounces of prevention to your electronic correspondence. First of all, don't vent it, but don't send it. When you get an inflammatory message demanding a reply, sometimes you feel compelled to say something and you just can't bear to wait. If everything in you wants to get mad or get even, go ahead and do it. Just don't send it. I've done that before. I've written many, many long letters and haven't hit the send button. Venting emotions in heated rhetoric can be incredibly therapeutic, liberating even, but it's dangerous when you share the heat. Action begets reaction, and if they have to deal with your reaction, you can be fairly certain that you'll have to deal with theirs. In the terminology used to describe difficult behavior on the internet, you may frequently come across the term flame or flame wars. A lot of times we don't hear that very often, but they talk about somebody being flamed. I've been flamed on here, definitely, on YouTube. Flame wars often erupt when someone sends something to someone that is intentionally or unintentionally aggravating and or insulting. If it's done intentionally, it's a flame. But the road to hell is often paved with good intentions, so an innocent message may also provoke a heated reply. It isn't uncommon for someone on the receiving end of a perceived flame to reply in kind. That's how flame wars get started. Someone sends a flame, which provokes a flame, which provokes a flame, until the landscape is ablaze with juvenile and thoughtless sentiments. When hard words are spoken, they often prove harder to take back. Best place to see that is in drama rooms. When people get on the microphone and just start, well, I don't like this about you. Well, I don't like that about you. Well, you should keep your mouth shut. Well, you should keep your mouth shut. Well, I heard how you did this. Well, what about when you did that? Flame wars, back and forth, back and forth. Of course, they get great ratings online, definitely. Lots of subscribers, too. People love that kind of stuff. Our advice, no matter how strong the urge to turn up the heat, hold your fire. If you're sure that the sender needs to feel the heat, save the message as a draft and revisit it until it says exactly what you need it to say. But make sure you wait at least a day. Another important safety tip, if you're going to vent, don't do it in your email software program. Do it in a separate text document. We constantly hear horror stories of people who vented and accidentally hit send instead of save. Yeah, been there, done that. Anybody else done that? Wrote a really nasty letter and oops, shoot, I just sent that and I can't get it back. Yeah, all the time. Not lately, but a long time ago when I used to get really angry on other forums. Yeah. From the very beginning of this book, we ask you to ask yourself what you want in your dealings with people. In the case of email, take the time to reconsider what you want and what you need. Do you need a good flame war? Do you really need to spend time dreading the next message? Do you need the anxiety of wondering what damage you've caused? We don't think so. Save yourself a world of trouble. Vent it, but don't send it. Oh, that's good, Marley. I have too many times, especially with narcissists, because you just get to the point where you want to make them hurt like they hurt you. Yeah. Read it one more time. If you think a message you're composing has the potential to cause or increase conflict, then no matter how much time you've spent composing it, it's in your interest to read it again to make sure you've removed all the potential hot button words and phrases that could create conflict and misunderstanding. Every message deserves at least one more reading before you hit the send button. Think of your message as a draft, not a finished product, and you can improve on it as you read it again. 3. Read it another time. Read it at another time. Better still, read the maddening email you received again at another time of day before deciding you're finished with your reply. As your blood sugar rises and falls throughout the day, the same words may sound different to you. You may even notice words and phrases that escaped your notice the first time around. Perhaps rather than responding to what you think the sender means, it would be worth composing a message that asks clarifying questions. Make every effort to be certain that you've understood what you read and why it was said before composing your response to it. Now, not all that long ago, there was a situation where I wanted it to end up a certain way. So I purposely said what was on my mind. I did not wait. I did not reread. I did not vent and then send. I sent it. I sent the reply immediately, and it had the outcome I wanted. And I've been very happy ever since. So, yeah, I don't have regrets about that. But if you don't want a certain outcome, then you owe it to yourself to reread it. Yeah. X's are a whole different ballgame, ain't they? Especially certain X's. Okay. And I like what they say about blood sugar. I never thought about the fact that blood sugar can make you perceive things differently. That's a really good point, and a lot of people don't even broach that subject because nobody probably ever thought about it. Get a second opinion. If a message hits you the wrong way, it may be wise to offer it to someone else to read so you can find out what the other possible meanings you may have missed. You may be surprised at the different interpretations others derive from the very same words, and it wouldn't hurt to have other people read your reply either. Ask them to give you feedback about how you might respond before composing your response, or at least get a second opinion on what you've written before making the final decision to send. So, this is really good advice. Basically, having people read whatever was sent to you. I've done that before. But when somebody tries to tell me, well, you shouldn't say this or you should say that differently, I get very offended because I'm a control freak and I like to be in charge of my own destiny. So, a lot of times I won't listen to them when I really should because they know what they're talking about. And they're really trying to spare me a lot of agony, aka my husband, who 99.9999% of the time is right. I don't always listen to him. I'm stubborn. I want to do it my way. Darn you. Why would you tell me to change that? I think it's perfect the way it is. They deserve to hear it that way, But if I would just listen to him and do what he tells me to do and suggests, I might have a better outcome. Oh, well, live and learn. So, number 5. Begin with intention, end with direction. In Chapter 7, Speak to Be Understood, we talked about the importance of stating your positive intent at the beginning of what you have to say. Electronic messages are a powerful medium in this regard because your intent remains visible to add context to the rest of your message. Begin your message with a clear statement of your intent so that your recipients will know why you're writing and what you hope to achieve before they get very far into what you have to say. Then end your message with a statement of direction. Tell your recipients what you want from them as a result of having read what you wrote. In sales, they taught us this. They tell us, now, don't take this offensively, they're like, people that will buy from you are dumb. They don't notice signs right in front of them that say such and such is on sale for such and such amount today. So as a result, they come up to the countertop, like if you're in a restaurant or whatever that you're working in. Oh, is that on sale today? And you're like, oh my gosh, the sign's right there. You see that it says it's on sale. Why would you ask me that? You don't say that to the customer, but you're thinking it in your head. Like, really? Customers really are dumb. That's what you're thinking. You'd never say that, but you're kind of like you become incensed because it's like it's right in front of your eyes. Why don't you read the sign? Or you want them to buy something from you. So you have to tell them, buy now, purchase here. That's why people use the whole supplies are running out fast, because they want you to act. And if you want somebody to act, you sometimes got to tell them to act. Just like subscribe to my channel, hit the like and share, hit the bell so you don't miss future uploads. That's all directives, because people don't automatically think, oh, gee, I really like this channel. Maybe I should subscribe. Not everybody thinks that way. Some people are just like, well, I'll try to find it later, and then they lost you forever and you never see them back. So if you tell them to subscribe and they hit the subscribe, then they don't lose you when they want to go back to it later. If your intent is to provide your recipients with information that requires no response, a simple FYI for your information at the beginning of the email message lets the recipients know you're informing them of information that you do not need a response from them for. FYI, I'm writing to give you a brief history of what I've been doing on this project because I think it will be of benefit to you in understanding my requests for help at our upcoming meeting. Now your recipients know that they don't need to reply to each point as they read them, but rather they can take the information and be ready to consider requests for their help at the meeting. Can't tell you how many times Matthew has said, honey, you don't need to respond to that. They just shared that just so you knew. He often has to tell me that because I'll be like, oh, I'm going to say this or that. They didn't ask for a response. Why are you giving them one? I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree sometimes with that stuff. Okay, by wrapping your message with a strong beginning and end, you provide an informed perspective that makes your words as meaningful as you intended them. Here's a little story. Daniel was part of a group wanting to improve a website. He found an internet site that he particularly liked, and he thought it made an excellent example. He sent a message to his associates that said, check out this website. I think it's great in many ways. Tell me what you think about it. Without his recipients knowing what specifically Daniel thought was so great, or taking time to clarify in their attempts to do as he asked, his recipients were left to apply their own criteria for a great website. Margaret looked at the site from the perspective of web design. She immediately began questioning the wisdom of Daniel's involvement in the project. This is his idea of a great site, she thought to herself. It violates many of the most basic precepts of intelligent web design. I'm not sure Daniel should be allowed anywhere near this project. Lucas, on the other hand, looked at the content of the site, and he was so put off by it that he almost resigned from the team then and there. And Harriet, who looked at it from the perspective of navigation and ease of use, was moved to send an email immediately to Daniel, suggesting that if he thought this was a great site, he had demonstrated a profound lack of discernment that had not only raised serious doubts about his involvement in the project, but would also, she was certain, lead to greater difficulties on the project down the road. A flurry of emails followed, and things got worse. Finally, the group was able to resolve the problem in a conference call. Once Daniel had the opportunity to make it clear what specifically he liked about the site and what he wanted them to see. But the problem could easily have been prevented if instead of a general direction, he had told them of his intention in making a request, and if he had told them specifically what he wanted them to evaluate about the site, and if he had ended with directions about how to respond with their evaluations, the chances for these misunderstandings would have been avoided completely. Dear colleagues, I would like you to review the following website from a marketing perspective. Ignore design and content, but look instead at how they present opportunities for their visitors to interact with the site and how they make it possible to purchase their products in each and every section. Then get back to me and tell me if you see anything we might be able to implement on our own site in order to boost interactivity and product sales. Daniel's colleagues could have responded differently to his initial request, too. They could have used email to listen to understand. They could have clarified Daniel's intentions in wanting them to evaluate the site, and they could have asked for direction in how to respond to it. The overall lesson here is simple. Begin with your intentions and end with directions so you can avoid the complications. Sounds good to me. Quote early, quote often. By the way, we're almost done with this. We literally are almost done with this. We only have let's see. Yeah, just a little bit, couple pages left, and we are done with the book. When you respond generally to an electronic message without it referencing specific words or phrases, readers can apply your words to anything else in either their message or yours. The problem with general responses is that they can produce a very different responses than the ones you intend. In chapter 5 of this book, we discuss the importance of backtracking, that is, using a person's own words in a face to face communication. Backtracking is a powerful way of providing context for questions or statements. It has great value in phone conversations too, turning long strings of words into meaningful ideas that relate to other meaningful ideas. But backtracking is usually or actually easier to do in electronic correspondence than in any other form of communication, since you can actually let the other person's words speak for themselves. A method for doing this has already been developed by the pioneers of internet and email communication. To backtrack, you simply use the caret sign, the right sign, in front of the words someone else wrote. This symbol is now generally recognized as a symbol for quoting what your correspondent said, and it helps him or her know to what you're responding. Quotes serve other purposes in electronic messages. You can use quotes to question the meaning of a word, phrase, or sentence. For example, when you say, "Let's see if you can get this one right," I cannot tell if you're being sarcastic or just kidding around. Which is it? You can also use quotes to offer choices. Let's say you wrote, "Let's see if you can get this one right." If your intention was to be sarcastic, then my response is this: "Really? Then here's an idea. Let's play horse. I'll be the head and you just be yourself." If, on the other hand, you were just kidding around with me, then my response to you is this: "LOL, yeah, I'll do my best to not screw it up." 7. Make better sense with emoticons. By the way, let's take a look at what they're talking about. This little squiggly line right here, this thing, that's what they're talking about. How you can put that there to basically requote what the person said, and then you can respond in like kind, usually asking for clarification. Are you just joking? Are you being sarcastic? Are you serious? That kind of thing can usually set the record straight with that. All right, 7, make better sense with emoticons, smileys, which brings us to another valuable communication opportunity of email. Since the early days of email, a set of cyber symbols called emoticons has emerged into common usage on the internet. Nicknamed smileys, you can use these little symbols to indicate your emotional state when replying to or sending an email. This adds contextual information to your words and decreases the likelihood of your being misunderstood. You guys remember this back in the day? Can you see this? The little wink wink face and the smiley face, those little things right there. We don't even have to use those now. We just got actual faces that we can use, little smileys or smiling clowns or dogs or kitties or whatever. Back then, they just had the literal emoticons, those little typed out semicolon dash parentheses, closing parentheses. But yeah, we've come a long way, huh? In our previous example, the sender could have used an emoticon to make clear the intention behind the words. Let's see if you can get this one right, with a wink at the end of it. The recipient of the message would know at a glance that these were friendly words rather than fighting words. Because not everyone using email knows the shorthand of emoticons, it is useful to get everyone you correspond with up to speed, so the symbols become a shared form of language rather than a private joke. In the text-based cyber world, we believe that adding at least some emotion to what you say by using these smileys makes for more fun and less conflict. Here are some of the most popular ones. And then they just give you a list of all these different emoticons you can use and what they mean. The range of emotions that you can express with smileys is astonishing, and you can add a few common abbreviations to provide even more direction, feeling, meaning. BFN, bye for now. BTW, by the way. HTH, hope this helps. IMO, in my opinion. IMHO, in my humble opinion. Like, there's a whole bunch of them here that you can use. Okay. And of course, RSI, repetitive strain injury, what you get from typing too many emails. Number 8, use jokes carefully. Jokester, beware. Jeff, this is for you if you're still here. Funny, isn't it, how different people are when it comes to what's funny? We don't mean to say that you should never try to be funny in your electronic correspondence. Go ahead and try. After all, humor can help people regain their perspective in difficult situations. But remember that a little kidding goes a long way, and then it works only if the other person gets the joke. Some forms of humor, like puns and other wordplay, are effective without the 55 and 38%. Other humor depends completely on a voice tone or facial expression. And when it comes to humor, one person's trash is another person's treasure. Unless you know for sure what makes certain people laugh, you should probably avoid being humorous. Sending them communication that they will perceive to be trash is a recipe for disaster. To gain insight into how humor works through the written word, we suggest you read almost anything ever written by Dave Barry. Of course, there's no accounting for taste. If you know for a fact that someone else shares your taste in humor, then you can share a joke with a friend or kid around with a colleague at your discretion. But when in doubt, leave the humor out. Take the time, save your time. By applying these 8 ounces of prevention, you can save the time that you otherwise would have to waste on negative reactions and misunderstandings. You don't have to read our book, Life by Design, available at www.thericks.com, if it's even still available by the time you go there, to recognize that you have more important things to do than fight it out with the ones and zeros on the internet. There's no doubt that taking back the advantage of time will save you time and energy in your dealings with others that can better be used elsewhere. Quick summary. When you're communicating via email, the 8 ounces of email prevention are: 1. Vent it but don't send it. 2. Read it one more time. 3. Read it at another time. 4. Get a second opinion. 5. Begin with intention, end with direction. 6. Quote early, quote often. 7. Make better sense with emoticons. And 8. Use jokes carefully. Jokester, beware. So, this is the afterword, and then we are literally finished. How to take the big step of applying the little steps in this book. And so we arrive at the end of the book, and at the beginning of your future dealings with people you can't stand. We hope that as a result of what you've learned, you'll be able to tolerate your difficult people better and successfully bring out the best in people at their worst. For that to happen, you'll have to now take the big step of applying the little steps in this book. Here are a few simple action steps you can take immediately. 1. Make it your goal to become an effective communicator and take all available opportunities to learn and try these techniques. Whether you're watching a movie or attending a meeting, you'll find examples of people using or failing to use the skills and strategies in this book, if only you remember to look for it. 2. Team up with communication partners, people who are eager to learn as you are. That's what we did. Share resources like this book with your partners so you'll have a common language in your discussions. Meet once a week to discuss what you've observed, learned, and tried during the preceding week. More than any other action you can take, regular meetings with communication partners can remind you to pay attention while keeping you focused on developing and improving your skill. Which brings us to the final action step and the end of this book, I believe. Yes. Count your blessings. If you have the luxury to read this book, you're already better off than perhaps 80% of the Earth's population in ways that you may sometimes take for granted. You probably have a roof over your head, sufficient food, people whom you care about, and some that care about you. Life is difficult, and there's enough hardship as it is without filling yourself with negativity and wasting your life force on worry and stress. If you remember to count your blessings today, maybe even right now and every day, you'll have the strength and focus to enjoy the challenges presented by difficult people. I might post my Count the Blessings book thing that I did video somewhere here in the corners. The communication strategies outlined in this book were not intended to be a quick fix for relationship problems. The longer it takes for a problem to develop, the more time and energy you must invest in turning things around. As you begin to apply these attitudes and strategies, chances are that you will have some easy successes and some unsuccessful efforts, that you'll win a few and lose a few. More important than winning or losing is having more choices, opportunities, and alternatives to suffering. You can now empower yourself to be the cause of what happens next, rather than the victim of what others have done. Though you cannot change anyone else, your flexibility and knowledge can assist people to change themselves. Commitment and perseverance will inevitably lead you to success in dealing with difficult people. Difficult people are part of every person's life, and apparently they've been with us since the beginning of history when the Lord said, "Let there be light," and difficult people first came into the world. They've been here ever since, waging war and engaging in interpersonal conflict, blaming, placating, distracting, and withdrawing, and projecting. We may as well add that one. Projecting, deflecting, triangulating. Yet each of us can do something to reduce the misunderstanding and eliminate the conflict that has plagued the earth. In fact, the future of humanity may depend on each of us learning how to stand each other in spite of our differences. And in that sense, there is no better time for bringing out the best in people at their worst than right now. Our children see their future in our efforts. They ask us to set a good example, do the right thing, and run a good race. So the next time you're dealing with someone you can't stand, remember this. Life is not a test. It is an actual emergency. Good luck. There you go. That is the end of the book. Yay, we're done. Woo, woo, woo. I'm happy. I can stop reading that book. It was starting to get a little bit monotonous for me to have to read it. I'm ADD, so my focus gets kind of thrown off after a while. Anyway, so that was dealing with people you can't stand. I can now pass this book along to somebody, or maybe my daughter, actually. She might benefit a lot from this if she would actually read it. Yeah, it might be a good gift for her when I go to see her. That's on my vision board, to drive out to stay with Amber for a couple days. But it's going to be a while because I've been missing a couple days of work. So now I have to get back into work and actually work quite a bit before I take another trip anywhere and ask for days off. Anywho, so that is that. Thank you for staying with me. If you did, I appreciate it. I will get going now. I need to go use the little ladies' room. I did promise a look at my foot for Marley. So hold on. I will show you my foot. My toe, as it were. My toe. Okay. I don't know if you can see it, though. Here, let's see. Can you see that? Here, there's my toe. Doesn't that look lovely? Yeah. It's actually healing, though. That's just black from the socks underneath. But the stuff on the top is an actual bruise and a sticky from the Band-Aid. But yeah, it's pretty bruised still. Pretty sore. There you go. That's the toe. Is it healing? Yes. Does it still hurt? You betcha. I'm trying not to bang it into anything else in the meantime, because I do have to go back to work tomorrow. So, yeah, that's that. At least it doesn't feel so funky like it did when it first started healing, though. It actually feels like it's together with the other one instead of spread apart, which is a really weird, eerie feeling. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to get going. You guys, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you and your kind attention to me reading. And I will go for now. And I will see you later. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Be blessed and shalom. What, Nine?